And now we're going to move to, I guess that was our North Carolina and Maryland virtual porch, and now we're going to have more of a DC virtual porch and talk about the COVID-19 Evidence Accelerator. And joining me for our porch chat is Gina Valo, who's a White House Presidential Innovation Fellow serving at the FDA. And I'll say it was great to open with the IMEDS discussion and remind us of this longstanding work and the opportunity, both the value that it provides and the opportunity that it presents. And now to talk about more in that real world evidence ecosystem in the COVID-19 Evidence Accelerator, which might be our most mentioned in 2020 activity. And Gina, it's great to have you here. I'm going to describe the Evidence Accelerator a little bit, and then I'm going to ask you to jump in and add from your perspective and address a couple questions. It is great to be on a porch with you, which I think we find ourselves in these conversations quite a bit in working directly on the Evidence Accelerator activity. So for those who aren't with Gina and me and the 100 or so folks who gather 4 times a month, twice on the first Thursday and twice on the third Thursday, and then at other meetings during the month to talk about the real world data of COVID-19, the Evidence Accelerator is where we gather the real world data community to talk about COVID-19, to share lessons learned, bring different disciplines together, and to help navigate that sea of real world data that we've been generating on a minute-by-minute basis to look at the real world use of therapeutics, of diagnostics, and now, thankfully, most recently, vaccines. Gina, you've been at the forefront of this work, in particular with our diagnostics activity. If I were to say to you, what else do you want to say about the COVID-19 Evidence Accelerator before we jump into questions? What would you want to make sure that folks know if they haven't joined our meetings before?
Sure. So I would say I encourage you to check it out. I think we have a really unique combination of different participants, as well as a combination of science and fun, which we do have quite a bit of, and I think that it's a nice staple in your week or in your month, and a place to come and share knowledge and learn, and really just invite. If you haven't checked it out yet, please do visit the website, sign up. I would love to see everyone there.
That's a great invitation, and we should say the website is evidenceaccelerator.org in the brilliance of an available URL that hit with what it is that we were trying to accomplish. Well, Gina, I'm going to ask you to reflect a little bit. What have you found most valuable in the Evidence Accelerator activity?
Sure. This has been, like I said, a really incredible experience, and I think the opportunity through the Reagan-Udall Foundation to work at the intersection of government, industry, academia, nonprofits. It's been a really, like I said, a very diverse group of participants, and to hear all of those perspectives. And also that intersection between policy and economics, and really what we're learning there. And lastly, the intersection between technology and the humans that use it. And what I think we've been able to do very well, and what has been really valuable in this group, has been the opportunity to look at both the forest and the trees. We look both big picture and small details, even down and to, I am guilty of sometimes getting way too in the weeds on some of the data and interoperability topics, but we're looking down to the nitty gritty and up to the big picture and everything in between. And then the other piece that I think has been really valuable for us is that we're not just looking at how to use real world data to answer specific questions, not just the answers to those questions, but we're learning how to do this kind of work, what we need to change for us to be able to do more of it, which, I think we've seen the value of the work in and of itself, but the learning that has happened has been incredibly valuable as well.
You're reminding me, Gina, I was struck by one of our recent duels between the biostatisticians and the epidemiologists, and I don't know that they were actively boxing or fencing, but there was certainly some different opinions about how something should be approached. And it was helpful, I think, not only for those who were dueling, but for those of us who were listening and saying, okay, what can we learn from this? And then how might we apply it in a non-COVID situation?
Exactly.
You know, you mentioned the different topics. I know we've heard from, we had the opportunity to hear from the National Football League and the NBA to talk about their COVID testing strategies, to talk with some of the schools and the educators. I know we have a quick slide that just has some of the topics we've covered and the folks who've presented, and this doesn't even begin to approach, this is just our diagnostics work and doesn't speak to what we've now heard about vaccines, just hearing about the experience in Israel last week and all of the work in therapeutics. So I have to say, the opportunity to learn from all of the folks, whether they're represented here and the topics are represented here, or they're simply attendees who then in the chat are having a really active and engaged discussion. It's been an intriguing and I think efficient way to learn about what's happening in COVID-19 and then tie it to the use of the FDA regulated products. With that, we've had some lessons learned and we've had some surprises. What has surprised you about the Evidence Accelerator?
So just looking on this slide and reflecting on the variety of participants that we've had, one thing that has really surprised me is the eagerness for various participants to share, the collaboration, the transparency and openness. And not just about what's going well, but also about the real problems that we're facing in doing this kind of work. I think that has, when I think about, how, simply a quick reach out to NBA or NFL has led to eager, yes, let's talk about this. Just as one example, that level of participation and desire to help and be part of the solution has been a really pleasant surprise. And then also the other piece that I found really delightful in this community and during this time in particular is the serendipity that has come out of this community. It's led to new ideas and partnerships, funding, and it's really rare and valuable all the time, but in particular at a time like this, when we're not gathering in person, when we are all feeling a bit isolated and disconnected in our home porches, it's really been wonderful and a really nice surprise to see how connections have been made in ways that extend well beyond FDA and Reagan-Udall Foundation and are between participants as well.
Important surprises and things that I've been surprised by as well. So in our spirit of learning, we always want to look to improve. So either in hindsight or looking forward, what would you change? We know we're still in the midst of COVID-19 and our Evidence Accelerator activity continues. So what should we do better?
Sure. So I think there's always a desire, to move faster. And I think we do have an opportunity to move more quickly, particularly on research questions. I think we've struggled a little bit to strike the balance between needing to align methodology, as you mentioned in our internal debates sometimes, and sprinting ahead. And when do we need to slow down and really focus on the methodology, and when do we just need to move faster? I think that balance is something we're still working on. I think we would benefit from clearer goals for the research questions themselves. So this is in particular to the parallel analysis and in those working groups, and really asking ourselves, are we looking to generate evidence, or are we just looking for signals that perhaps make sense to then explore further in the context of a randomized control study? And that, again, is kind of figuring out what that right balance is. And then the last thing is, I would really love to see us have a bit of a more fluid model of participation in the parallel analysis and the research questions, where it's a bit easier for us to pose questions where we would like to get more participants in data, and where folks can more easily raise their hand if they have the right data to participate. I think we've gotten a little bit tight-knit in that group, and I would love to open that up a bit further and be a little bit more flexible with participation there. But overall, I think these are all very, very iteratively solvable problems or challenges that we can take on as we continue to evolve this work.
Really helpful feedback, Gina, and it makes me even think, so much of what we've learned in that parallel analysis activity has been less about the actual question being answered and far more about, well, how are diagnostic tests being used? How are different therapeutics being used? How is the data flowing or not?
Or not.
in vaccine information, in testing information, that there's been so many, I was going to say so many answers, but that's probably the wrong word, but so much information and value generated that just by the process. And we probably haven't captured that well enough either. Great. Gina, I'm going to move from our porch to talk about COVID-19 vaccines. Any final word for you before we move from our porch to a different one?
Sure. I wanted to thank you, Susan, and the Reagan-Udall Foundation team. You have been such great partners and such a great resource. And I think, one of the great parts of working with you all is the fun we've had both on and off camera in these meetings, and working our way through the unknown together. Working with Amy Abernethy, she always said, if it's not fun, it's not worth doing. And I would say this is very much worth doing. It's been a really bright spot in a really tough year, and just wanted to thank you all for your hard work, and really appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this community with you.
Well, you're welcome, and the thanks to you, and clearly to our friends at the Friends of Cancer Research, who are our partner, in that kind of tripartite group. We do occasionally have to bring ourselves back to task, but we do have that fun and learn. So really appreciate it. Thanks, Gina.